Hey, great. So for those joining right now, welcome to the Bay Area Cyversity chapter meeting for the month of October. We'll give this a minute or two for some additional folks to join, and then we'll kick the meeting off. Appreciate everyone's time. All right, it's almost 12:05 by my calendar here or watch, and we want to get started. So welcome to the San Francisco Bay Area chapter meeting for the Cyversity Engage series for the month of October. This month is Cybersecurity Awareness Month. I'm sure that as practitioners and folks that are interested in the industry, everyone's super busy this month, providing insights into challenges on the cyber threat landscape. And certainly as an employees of large scale enterprises, you've probably participated in a number of meetings this month dealing with cybersecurity issues and just inoculating the workforce to cybersecurity challenges. We try and meet monthly for the Bay Area chapter. We do it virtually, and we also have at least annually 1 to 2 in-person meetings. We have an in-person meeting coming up actually for both the month of October and December, which I'll talk about towards the end of this conversation. But our goal today is really to just talk about the amount of time, effort, leadership, and really skin in the game that leaders engage in this topic of diversity and equity and inclusion in the cybersecurity space. And so what I'd love to have is an open discussion, and I've asked one of the additional chapter leads for Cyversity to join in on the call to help us drive this conversation. So just a couple of admin matters before we get started. For those of you unfamiliar with Cyversity, our mission is to achieve the consistent representation of women and traditionally underrepresented minorities in the cybersecurity space. We do this in a number of ways. We have a number of chapters across the country, and we're hoping to expand globally at some point. Membership totaling somewhere north of 3,000 members, and the Bay Area chapter at any one point in time is one of the more vibrant chapters. Again, so our goal is to get folks into the space who come from traditionally underrepresented communities. Here is the leadership team for the Bay Area chapter, all folks who are engaged in a variety of ways in the cybersecurity mission space. From either a practitioner standpoint, educator standpoint, HR, a lot of deep experience in this, and we've been holding strong, running the chapter now for, has it been more than 2 years? But really running strong, and I rely heavily on this this group that you see here on the screen. The reason I show this at the top of every meeting is because folks come to our meetings in a variety of ways or a variety of pathways. So if you want to reach out to any of us individually to talk about chapter events or to figure out how you can get involved in the chapter, please go direct with any one of us, and we'd be happy to plug you into the activities. So this is part of a series of meetings held by Cyversity chapters. We try and cover a variety of topics heading down on the areas, as you see there, career development through very specific tech talks. I would put this particular Engage series under the leadership realm because I'm going to probe Bennett, and I'm going to offer my own insights, and we'll get insights from others on the leadership aspect of what it takes to really put skin in the game on this topic. And quite frankly, I'm interested in hearing from our guest why folks do what they do, why they spend what might be by some an inordinate amount of time on this topic, unpaid for nearly all of us engaged in this, but certainly stuff that we're passionate about. So I'm interested in diving deeper in that. So at any one point in time, because the meetings are all held virtually, you guys can jump in on these meetings by the other chapters. If you are a Cyversity member, you likely receive emails from Cyversity indicating that these meetings are coming up, and that they're obviously happen on a variety of days and times. So I would highly encourage you to either attend those meetings live if you're able to, or go to the YouTube channel to see where these conversations live and review the recordings of them, because I think they're really good. All right. let me pause the share there because I'll cover the social media presence here towards the end. But I want to welcome Bennett Hendrix, who's one of the chapter leads for Cyversity. I also have, I see here on the screen, Olivia, who's part of the leadership team here for the Bay Area chapter. And I want to get into a conversation right now around really what has become a passion project for many of us in this industry around this topic of increasing the number of women and traditionally underrepresented minorities in the cybersecurity space. And I really want to get into the why. So Bennett, I'll ask you to jump in first here. And really, before you do that, a little bit of an introduction. Why don't you tell folks who you are, what you do in the cybersecurity realm, and then we'll get into how you got involved with Cyversity.
Sounds good. Can you hear me correctly? Fine. Perfect. All right, so how y'all doing today? I am Bennett Hendrix III. I'm very particular about the third, just a fun note because I am not my grandfather, but nonetheless, I am the Texas chapter Cyversity president, where I have a group of team members as well. I won't shout them out because this is not mine, so I'm going to stay in my lane. Nonetheless, so starting off, I graduated college in 2018, but I started my career in 2019 within a month as I moved to San Antonio, Texas to begin my career. I have been a cybersecurity analyst at a Fortune 57 company. I've also been an information security intern at a Fortune 200 company. And I've been doing SOC work for about 2 years now. SOC work is simply security operations centers for those viewers who may not know what it is. And basically what that is simply in the simplest terms is just investigating any suspicious activity, simply put, of course, in the cybersecurity realm. And so right now I work at CVS and I created the Texas chapter back in last year, to be specific. So I won't go too far into anything else, just for the simple sake of time.
So, Bennett, I want to make sure we tease out there your journey into cybersecurity before too long, before we dive more deeply in the Cyversity component of it. So for the folks who are viewing this, maybe after the fact, and for those on the line, how did you get into cybersecurity? If you might talk a little bit about what that track, were you already trained, certified? Did you identify the industry as something you wanted to be a part of and then get certified, trained? Tell us a little bit about that journey.
Okay, no problem. So I'm gonna date myself here, in my young age. But in 2014, I was graduating high school. I was kind of confused on what I wanted to do. I knew nothing about cybersecurity at that time. The only thing, hold on, I'm sorry. I'm speaking a little fast because another video I created. So let me slow it down a little bit. But my apologies. But ironically, I stumbled upon the field accidentally. Now I watched it. I found out about it from watching my favorite show at that time called Dexter. And I thought what he was doing was interesting. Well, not killing people, but the job I thought he was doing at that time was interesting. And so literally what the scene showed was him on a computer moving blood because he was a blood splatter analyst, which I thought was not the case. Nonetheless, this guy, great show. But this guy was not at all anything cybersecurity related. But for me, I found out about it because I said, okay, he's doing something on the computer and it's with blood, so forensics. So I typed in computer forensics into Google and found out all about cybersecurity. Projected median at that time was about 80K by 2020, if I'm not mistaken. And I'm like, this is something that looks interesting. I can get into, the only hack at that time was PSN, if you remember that 2013 hack. Equifax was right around that time, but I want to say it happened a little afterwards. So either way, there wasn't much visibility into cybersecurity like there is now, which is a good thing for now. Now, I say this because my journey was like many other people who don't know much about cybersecurity or didn't know it was an option, didn't know anything about it, simply put, right? So I decided last minute that this is what I'm going to dedicate my career to. And when I became a student at my college in Missouri, realistically speaking, I was put on academic probation. I was the first generation low-income student. So I won't say the stereotype, but simply put, I did not have the resources to thrive in this field. So it was kind of a challenge for me, realistically speaking. But by the end of my curriculum or my college experience, I was able to put on to Dean's List to just show a little bit of that growth. So I specified a lot on the very beginning point because I need to try to iterate to everyone that I knew nothing in this field. And I felt out of place because my peers, for example, they've been doing this since, well, at that time, they've been doing it for 4 or 5 years, since 2010, just for the simple sake of loving computers. And that was not my case. So I was fairly intimidated, but I decided to go ahead and step up to the plate and try to make up for time by just diving into cybersecurity as a whole. But before I continue, because when asking about certain details, it's definitely a long story. So I want to stop there and see where you would like me to pivot.
No, and I appreciate the pause. And honestly, you've already, I think, hit maybe one or two of the pillars of sort of the target audience that we are typically trying to encourage to look at this field. One, all you need to show is that you have an aptitude and an interest. And then from there, without any prior knowledge, the idea here is to expose this field to folks who may not normally assume that there are opportunities for them in the cybersecurity realm. And I think just already in your story, you've indicated or shown that really you're basically the test case for this entire thing. But I want you to continue on with your story around how you decided then to get educated on cybersecurity and maybe how you landed your first gig.
Okay. Give me 1 second. I apologize. Got a little hot in here. All right. So, how I landed cybersecurity. So, my first job or position, that was a very stressful thing. So, basically, to give a quick summary of my college journey, freshman year, I was put on academic probation. Sophomore year, I started to kind of get a feel for things. They waited to junior year to give me a cybersecurity course, which I hated because I wasn't trying to wait that long to determine if this field was something I actually wanted to do. So I'm going to include a pro tip that I always give everybody in a second. But basically, in 2016, I didn't really have too much of an idea. So I held on to that digital forensic passion because that's what I knew. I didn't have no experience or I read no coursework about it, but I decided to go ahead and start reading everything early so I can get a little bit of information. I didn't want such a gap in my knowledge compared to my peers so I can thrive in the field as well, right? Does that make sense? So, and I'll say this because I started being serious about it sophomore year. So sophomore and junior year it was grind time, knock everything out. But by senior year, I was advised to go ahead and apply for positions. What I did not know is you apply for positions October, pretty much around this time, honestly, but September, October, November timeframe to be selected for that internship the following year.
Right.
So I mentioned this because I was late to the game, quote unquote, and the interview process was incredibly long. So I had 10 interviews with various companies. And by the 10th interview, I finally actually got my internship as an information security intern for a Fortune 200 company. But that's as we all know, it's incredibly annoying and difficult to get that first job, especially when there's no experience and everybody says it's entry, but asks for years of experience. So I can also stop there just to try to, pivot a little bit more, or I can continue because this is by definition not even my final graduation date.
Yeah, so I think that the path you took was interesting. The internship route. This is obviously a way that we advise many folks, especially if they're of collegiate age and they're already engaged in their studies. Internships can be a viable route into the field. Why don't you jump to the internship itself? Did you feel you got some value out of that? And then if that directly led to you getting your first permanent position, then that'd be great.
Perfect transition, actually. So I can do both. All right. So the internship, realistically speaking, it was what you make it, just like everything in life. So I decided to make it a good experience for me. The reality was I was unfamiliar with corporate America, and I was in uncharted territory just due to my experience. So The internship was good. You know, I actually started off going to work in the suit. I actually have a tendency of doing this because, you know, first impressions matter, but I went in the suit, you know, grind time. I decided to go ahead and do everything I needed to in order to try to develop those relationships there. And so in doing so, I was under a guy named Tom. I won't say his last name for security purposes, but I'm under a specific guy, and I was able to, you know, work on vulnerability scans and other similar things. It wasn't too technical. It was kind of the work they didn't want to do, but that's realistically, that's internship. It's all about how you flip it. And so we worked with Qualis, and I just, you know, run reports and try to do other tasks they did not want to do. I also would go and speak with everyone on my team and ask them specifically if there's any tasks that I could do to help. You know, the way I work as a whole is identify a problem, provide a solution. Even in this example, I'm trying to figure out what you're looking for and give you the answer for it. Either way, I was able to actually get my Security Plus certification at the same time of that internship because they allowed me to study when I had no tasks, but mainly I was trying not to study, if that makes sense. I didn't want the foundational work. I wanted the actual time behind the keyboard work.
The practical stuff, yeah.
Say it again?
The practical application stuff. You wanted to actually do the work to learn it.
Exactly. And so I was actually able to get the Security Plus certification during my internship. So it worked out great. And afterwards, you know, I didn't want to stay local because I'm not a fan of my hometown. So I don't want to stay local, but that kind of drove me to find out about Cyversity. And by that, I mean, by that time it was called ICMCP. But at this point, you know, I am a senior, I have a certification and I have an internship. At this point, and I'm about to have a degree and graduate in a couple months. So I was on LinkedIn realistically, and I saw another Black professional or student, and he had a lot of internships. And I was trying to figure out what he did and what I can use to improve myself, make myself more marketable. And he had a Black networking group that he was a part of. So I literally typed in Black cybersecurity. And at that time, the only organization established was ICMCP. Bought the conference ticket, flew to Atlanta on my own money with my own funds in college during midterms week. So it was already kind of interesting to say the least. But there, I did go to the career fair that we had on Sunday, and also was able to give my elevator pitch in the middle of a presentation because the keynote speaker allowed us to go into groups to practice elevator pitches, ironically. So I asked if I could give mine on stage because I actually also had an internal plan to introduce myself to everyone at the conference. And while I probably got to like 30 people the first day, I chose to work smarter, not harder. And I decided, stage would be an easier way to introduce myself to everyone, opposed to me walking up and shaking X amount of hands. And so the pitch actually went well. I got a lot of good feedback from it, but it was to a bunch of about 100 or more CISOs, CEOs, partners, and other people of C-level in hiring positionings. So it worked out great, which is another reason why I'm so passionate about Cyversity, because I am a very outgoing person that's extroverted. So, extroverted. So I had to use that to my advantage. And y'all may not notice I'm sitting down, but the reality is I'm a 6'4" Black man. So people gonna see me regardless. So why not use it to my advantage? And that was my approach. And it worked out fairly well, honestly.
It did work out well. I was at that Atlanta conference, and I remember distinctly the showing of folks and the ability to network was a great opportunity for folks interested in entering the field. Talk specifically about the first job. So you've done all of this stuff, I think, in prep. You've made, I think, an outstanding example of the amount of effort that individuals who want to break into the field, what you have to do in order to expose yourself to the network, start to educate yourself, look for internships. You've got this, the one certification that you were pursuing that you got under your belt. How'd you land the first gig?
So after the conference in September, I was contacted by a recruiter for, I won't say it, but I contacted from a recruiter at one of the big four, simply put. And ironically, despite me going to Atlanta at a conference during midterms, my interview was their finals week. Again, this finals week graduation, and I gotta drive 2 hours to the airport, fly to San Antonio for one night only, fly back to the airport, and then drive back down 2 hours. But of course, if there's a will, there's a way. So that interview process was interesting only because I've never been flown out before by an employer, and they are a very prestigious company. So I was, very excited for it, didn't know what to expect. I impressed the director, who was very powerful per se at that time. So it worked out great. And so I moved to San Antonio in January, as mentioned. So when I started working, I was trying more to, again, have a good impression. So I came there with suits. I saw very quickly that it's not needed, but again, first impressions mattered. And then I started the work. And personally, my journey, I didn't have a client for the first few months. So at that time, I had to figure out a different way to stay active, because I didn't want to get into bad habits, especially as I started out in my career journey. I didn't want to do what other people were doing.
So I want to, Bennett, I want to pause for one quick second, because I give advice like you quite frequently to folks trying to break into the industry. And I think for some reason, people don't immediately assume that consulting is a way to break into the cybersecurity industry. You landed a position with one of the big four, as I heard you recall. And this is such a viable way for people to get into the industry and get a broad base of experience, essentially by getting exposure to multiple clients and customers, and being able to develop that kind of expertise that you can get from sort of jumping from one customer to the next. And I just want to hammer home that as you think about ways to break into the industry, this consulting and advisory role thing is enormous. There's a huge market out in the space for folks that want to get into cybersecurity by joining a consulting or advisory firm. And it doesn't necessarily have to be the big four. Not everybody's going to land a job with the big four. There are a number of regional, national, international consulting and advisory firms that do cybersecurity work. And I just want to hammer home to folks that are subsequently viewing this, that if you've got a viable amount of experience, maybe some certs under your belt, and you're still trying to break in, think about the advisory space.
Of course. That actually brought up another thing I meant to mention previously regarding the internships, right? So the main question I get personally when I am speaking is, okay, so what do I do when I don't have an internship? Because of course, not everybody's able to do that for one reason or another. My best advice to people who are looking but are unable to at that moment is to do self-studies. Self-study whatever topic or subject you find most interesting and have labs on it. That realistically was my best advantage. It was because the employers were able to see my ambition. They were able to see my dedication based alone off the fact that I didn't have experience. I had, coursework and studies, but me going outside of that, doing labs, and I was passionate about it, gave them more of a hope to hire me, simply put. So I bypassed that accidentally, but I want to reiterate that real quick. And you did say something else that triggered my mind. I apologize if I have you reiterate.
That's all right. I think that you're, again, hammering home something that we try and express to folks, those of us that have been around the industry for a while. Self-study is it's hugely important, and you have to carve out time continuously. There's no end state to that. You have to carve out time continuously throughout your career to create opportunities for yourself to learn, engage, and stay on top of all of the changing issues in the cybersecurity realm. So I think you emphasizing the whole self-study thing is important. I want to make sure we leave ample time to really talk about the Cyversity piece and how you got involved in that. I remember having a conversation with you now better than a year ago before you even launched the chapter there in Texas. If you could jump ahead to me, the focus of this particular talk was really supposed to be around this passion topic of why we're doing what we're doing, why we spend the amount of time that we do on this topic. So if you could outline to me when was it that you first recognized first that there weren't a ton of people that look like you in this industry, and follow that up with why you felt so passionate about carrying the mantle, launching that chapter in Texas. So first, when did you recognize there's not a ton of African Americans in the cybersecurity space?
The first day of class. I went to a PWI and I did not meet another Black man cybersecurity student until my last semester. So 4 years in, I finally met him. And mind you, it wasn't, we had the same course. It was actually, realistically, it was due to partying. We partied together. And I just so happened to say something about how, one of the things I was doing, I don't know if I was reading a book or going on an interview, but I was doing something and he let me know, oh, I'm in that too. I'm like, stop lying. Like, oh, really? So I actually accidentally found out about it, but it took me 4 years to do that. So I'm very passionate in that regard, and which also allowed me to see that it's despite just, I won't say just only Black people, I mean like all minorities, of course. And there wasn't that many women as well. Realistically speaking, I did meet women the first or second course I had, but it still was something that was very rare. So it was very evident that, that the majority does not look like me, unfortunately. And at that time, I didn't have any mentors or didn't know anybody in the field. So it was very hard for me to find guidance in such a manner. So not too long after I moved down to San Antonio, I decided to create the Cyversity chapter, Texas chapter, because of two reasons. One, the amount of opportunity that is here in Texas is extraordinary, realistically speaking. It's like the second biggest state in the United States of America. So a lot of opportunity, and with the amount of opportunity, there's trifold amount of resources and people that were like me that needed that guidance. Many people don't know about Cyversity, and that's an unfortunate thing, but I am I'll say a poster child for it per se, but I'm a great example.
No, you are. You're a poster child. I didn't want to use that term, or maybe I did earlier, but no, I think you're the use case for the Cyversity mission. And I think the story that you've laid out is one that is an example of exactly the target audience, typically that we're trying to touch. And make sure that people understand these opportunities that are available. And just to button that up, when you talk about geographical regions, certainly, the presence of Austin, San Antonio, Dallas, and Houston, all of that enterprise activity, all of them need cybersecurity professionals, every last one of them. A good time to note that most cybersecurity, or the vast majority, I think every year it's 1.5 million positions globally go unfilled in the cybersecurity realm. So there is tremendous opportunity for people of color and women to identify a career path in this field and potentially land jobs in a field that quite frankly has become the center of enterprise risk within most organizations. So launching the chapter, you seem like you have a lot of bandwidth. Why are you so passionate about investing your time in this? Because I have, as you indicated, we got a chapter here in the Bay Area. You're leading the one in Texas. Talk about why the time commitment, why you're devoting cycles now to trying to get other people into the industry.
So it's funny because I am so passionate about it. Despite the chapter, I actually have my own cyber business. Not trying to self-plug myself real quick, but I have to be honest about the actual mission. The mission is the same regardless.
Absolutely.
That one, in my cyber Bennett business, I actually speak to students, like high schoolers and middle schoolers and college students about this, which is something I want to say don't steal it, but do what you must with the Bay chapter, which is actually something I'm also trying to do with the Texas chapter as well, is get more college students because they need it the most. And I know this because I needed it the most. The lack of diversity is very important, but I personally cannot point out anyone who looks like me in the field. I don't even mean, just Black. I mean Black and young, and still speaking to students, respectfully. Most people in the field are older white men. So what high schooler is able to relate and see themselves in the shoes if they don't see representation at a younger age that's more relatable to them. When I first started Cyber Bennett, I was 22 years old. That's like only a couple years after seniors who are most likely in high school, 18 years old. So that's just that iteration. But as far as the why, it's desperately needed. As you see, I literally am like trying to provide solutions to problems. The amount of opportunity that the field is able to bring and has brought me, which I won't go into because I don't like to seem like bragging, but what has brought me, it can do way more for people who started earlier than I. Remind you, I started when I was like roughly 20. Is when I got serious. So if the younger they start or the older, doesn't really matter. I just mean this in terms of the amount of preparation that they have. Anybody that's looking at this video or in Cyversity, they are already interested. So at least in that regard, for those who are already interested, providing a community for them to network, just have a group of like-minded individuals allows them to not only thrive in the field, but help them overall in whatever life endeavors they're encountering, because a job obviously determines like your whole livelihood. You know what I mean? So if somebody is struggling with their struggles, they will be able to get a nice job and have certain talking points that will benefit them greatly.
Yeah, this field is going to be around for a long time to come, and anyone that's involved recognizes how it's actually grown just over the past decade in terms of its relative importance in enterprise risk matters. So the availability of jobs will continue to increase. As Bennett, as you indicated, I think it's a great field to be in. The economic benefits certainly stack up against nearly any other industry in terms of where you may want to look to put all your chips in terms of investment of your time in order to achieve a career path. And it's so wide and so deep in terms of all the variable tasks and positions that you can find yourself in, that there's room for everybody in this. It's not something where you have to be able to code prior to going into. It certainly requires a level of interest in the field. I tell everyone, you got to be interested in order to, because it's going to require some work on your part to even break through what are some of those artificial barriers in order to gain entry into the field. But you don't have to come from a specific background. There's no one typical path that brings folks into cybersecurity, and to hear that you're passionate about getting this messaging out to students on your own is important, because it, identifying potential opportunities at the stages that they're at in life, I think is a valuable resource. And kudos to you for, taking up that mantle and doing it. I know the answer to this from my vantage point. How many cycles do you spend outside of your primary job organizing DEI focused cybersecurity stuff on a month-to-month basis? How would you describe the amount of time you spend on it?
That's like a trick question. As far as I don't measure it. If I was to count or manage exactly how much time I invest in it, I may want to scale back. Just being honest. But if I had to guess, I would probably say like at least 10 hours a month, which is not that, no, it's probably more than that. But let's just say 10 hours a month. That's whether that's setting up meetings, talking to people, trying to figure out the next chapter event, sending out emails, talking to my board, about at least 10 hours just dedicated to getting people aware of Cyversity alone.
No, and honestly, I like the first portion of your answer, which is if you actually calculated the amount of time that you spend on this. Again, this is for all of us, nearly all of us, unless you are a hired DEI professional working for a company. This is an adjunct to whatever it is that you're responsible for doing. And if you were to actually measure it, you're right. You might have to throttle back on the amount of time, because it's an inordinate amount of time. Again, that's to the whole point of the passion that we all have around this topic. And I'm trying to drive at those individual passions that people have around this topic. Let me open it up, take a moment to bring in Olivia who's also on our leadership team here for the Bay Area chapter. She comes in from that education pillar and education perspective. Probably was smiling when you mentioned that the students probably need this stuff the most. But Olivia, you want to talk a little bit about your passion around the topic and, again, why you're doing what you're doing in terms of spending time on this subject for the population that you're targeting?
Well, I got to say first, Bennett, you are definitely epitomizing what we need to get done. And and just to say, I work in that space. I work in the community college space around our programs in cybersecurity, but we also reach back into K-12. And the great thing that I'm hearing, and I would share this with all of you, particularly for students, is that we have found one of the most effective ways, not only for our students in cybersecurity, but also to start to build that pipeline early, is that we bring together our current community college students with high school students doing competitions. Sometimes going down the middle, capture the flag type stuff. It's first of all, it's a lot of fun. And these kids just light up. I mean, it's just amazing when they see what they can do. But the other thing that I have found is when our students who are working and supporting and mentoring the high school and middle school students, they're gaining a lot of experience, a lot of very valuable experience. And we have found that employers look at that and say, if you've been creating these environments for camps, you've been supporting these middle and high school students into getting of that. And we're finding that they get snatched up into jobs even before they finish their school. So I'm really excited to hear about what you're doing. And I really would, all of you that, any of you on the call or listening to this later that are students, look into how you can get engaged with supporting these kind of programs, because they're all over. I mean, that's one of the most effective ways of outreach and awareness is in some of these captures of flag type of competitions that are done all the way down to the middle school level. So I'm just really encouraged by what you're doing, Bennett. It kind of like, proves a point I try to make all the time. And great advice. Glad to see you have that focus.
So on the point of advice, Bennett, if you could, I'm sure you're used to giving advice frequently. What's your top, 3 or 4 things that you try and relate to folks who are interested in this industry? How you get people motivated about it?
So realistically speaking, I like to give my honest feedback and my honest perspective, because also another fun fact, at the time of 2014, there wasn't too many reviews about people trying to make it in cyber. So I want to be 100% transparent for everyone. So the main thing that, if I had to say the top 3, I would want to start off with the passion, because it's something that you mentioned I want to mention as well. I'm gonna stop saying realistically. But honestly speaking, I was not passionate about cybersecurity. That's just the ugly truth of it. I was not passionate. I had to develop my passion as I kept learning it. I was dedicated, and that, I believe, was the most prosperous benefit or trait that I had that led to me starting to become passionate. Many people think that you are born with it, or that you are birthed with knowledge of how to code, and it's not that. It's not at all that thing. And I think a lot of people who are interested in it, they're curious about it, but they believe that they can't do it because they're not passionate about it, or whatever the case may be. You can learn that. And I don't mean like trick yourself. I mean like literally you can learn it by further developing into it. So that was side of a rant. So the second thing I say is get the experience by self-learning, as it shows ambition. So I won't go too much into that one. But the third thing I would say is, when you're looking into the field of cybersecurity, look into the different categories, because there's like 3 or 4. And so I can go into them, but for the sake of time, I won't. All I will say is identify which one is most interesting to you, and then pursue it. Whether it's the job duties or if it's learning certain tools. I like forensics because I like the idea of being able to investigate hard drives and other media, analyze other media that store data. So me just knowing that, and that one sentence kind of allowed me to have a guideline or a guidance to the upward hill the mountaintop that I'm trying to get to. So those would be the top three. Always keep self-learning and use labs. They'll be your best friend when you don't have experience. Look into the areas of cybersecurity and identify which one you wanting to go into, and understand that you can learn passion. You don't have to be born, quote unquote, with it.
Great stuff. So for the benefit of the audience, I hold a mentoring circle, and I'm actually going to be going through in the next section what some of those subdomains look like. And I'm not sure there's a better term for it in terms of just the variety of areas that you can get into. I mean, some that come to mind immediately are, as you indicated, digital forensics, incident response, security operations, governance, risk, and compliance. There's a whole legal component to the field as well. Just a number and a variety of fields that you can pursue that will get you that foothold into the industry, get you some exposure to it, and then subsequently help you to land a potential position in a cybersecurity company. So I want to, for the next 2 minutes at least, open it up. If there are any folks on the line that maybe have questions for Bennett, Olivia, or myself, around our support of Cyversity, and just want to open the floor. And if you want to just drop something in the chat, that's fine. Or if you want to come off mic and ask your question yourself.
Mm-hmm.
Okay. Unless someone jumps off the mic now, I will take that as a.
I'll jump in. In. Okay, how you doing, man? Good to see you.
Good, Jason. Good to see you.
How you
doing? Good, Bennett. Great story. It's inspirational, and I think I kind of came into this field in the same way you did. I was a musician for many years, and it's kind of funny how I ended up getting here. But my question for you was, did you have any kind of mentors or anything when you were in college, when you were looking at this field or IT, or was there anybody that stood out for you, or was there, did you have somebody to reach out to who was kind of pointing you in the right direction, or was this all something that you just did on your own, just through your interest?
It was something I did on my own. I was able to find Cyversity, previously known as ICMCP, because I Googled it. But as far as local professionals, no, I didn't have any. Unfortunately, because I didn't know many. I did actually go to a local coding company and ask to shadow. And that's just, once again, me just taking another way of trying to find mentorship. And one of the things I could also say with finding them is, once you find someone that agrees to it, keep that relationship going. I say this because I can actually say that I probably had about, let's say, 8 people reach out to me asking for me to be their mentor, which I am more than happy to do. Yet not one of them have kept consistent with me. However, I can also say that as a mentee, I consistently reach out, even if it's once a year, realistically speaking, but even if it's once a year, I reach out to them just to see how they're doing. And I was able to get a mentor because of ICMCP Cyversity back in college, but it was because I signed up and found out about the cohort that we have. So that was the only time I was able to get one. I had mentors in other areas, and I tried to make it work, transfer their advice, but overall, no cybersecurity professionals were actual mentors.
Right. Okay.
Now, the subject of mentoring in cybersecurity is a big deal because, Jason, as you were, I think, driving towards, having those folks that you can turn to for advice, to offer you insights around how to break into the field once you land a job, how to do well at it, and then develop your skills and continue on and progress. Always important. I, with everyone that I talk to, will emphasize that identifying a mentoring bench or advisory team, if you will, is the way that I've approached it historically, and it's always worked out well. I've got, that slate of 3 to 4 folks that I respect highly and that I turn to oftentimes when making career pivots and decisions around how to progress my career. And, not one of them, no single person has my ear. But the fact that what I do is I gather advice from a variety of lanes and then, use that to make my decision. So identifying a mentor is important. Cyversity has launched a formal mentoring program. So for those of you that are watching and are not members, I'd highly encourage you to go to the Cyversity site and join, because that mentorship component is a vital part of how it is that you thrive in this particular industry. A couple of other notes I will hit on, and I see that the admin has put the link to the survey in the blog. I advise those watching, if you're not a Cyversity member, please go to the website, cyversity.org, and explore. Look for a chapter that might be regional to you. And if there's not a chapter, I would still encourage you to join, because right now, since we're doing all of these virtual engagements, there's ways for you to plug into the organization in a variety of different ways, even if there's not a physical chapter located where you happen to reside. Secondly, a couple of events coming up I want to make sure people know about. Cyversity holds an annual conference. There was a little bit of a pause during the pandemic, but we're back to live and in-person conferences. And we have a conference coming up November 6th through 8th in Orlando, Florida, the annual conference. And as Bennett indicated, that was where he sharpened his tool set a little bit. I highly advise folks, yes, sometimes you got to spend, dollars out of your own pocket to invest in this opportunity to jump into this industry. Many of us have done that and will continue to do it. If your employer is willing, you can try and get your employer to pay for your attendance at the conference, but it's coming up. I'd highly advise folks to register for that conference and attend in person. There's nothing like that in-person connectivity that you get from meeting folks in the industry, and the viability of opening up opportunities. There's absolutely going to be a job fair associated with it, but again, it's an opportunity for you to meet folks in the industry, thriving, working, and that network is going to be your key to success. The Bay Area chapter is having its next meeting in person. So during the month of December 8th, I think is the date, we're holding our chapter meeting in conjunction with UC Berkeley's Center for Long-Term Cybersecurity. We will be holding a meeting at one of the Berkeley facilities there close to the campus. So for folks watching this who are Bay Area residents or Bay Area focused, I would highly encourage you to register for and attend this event. Look for information again on the Cyversity website for this upcoming event, and there'll be a sign-up page where folks can RSVP. We'll start off that meeting, one, recognizing that every year we try and hold a end of year event. We successfully did one last year through our chapter leadership and had a nice showing of folks in person. We're hoping even for a larger show out this year. So be on the lookout for information related to that. Then the last thing I'll leave you guys with, to the point of scholarship opportunities and getting educated, the Bay Area chapter has once again, in collaboration with SANS, created a diversity academy that we're now offering globally for folks to get into this field. It's positioned for folks not currently in cybersecurity. It's a full scholarship opportunity that will give you some baseline instruction in cybersecurity, but then drive folks through a regimented course of SANS certifications. This particular cohort is being sponsored by Google Cloud and Palo Alto Networks. And again, it's an ongoing relationship that Cyversity has with the SANS organization that makes these things possible. I would highly encourage people to apply. If you are looking at this particular video, not already a member of the cybersecurity industry and are looking for ways to get trained up, the applications are open for that now, and we're going to be very selective about pulling folks globally into that program and then getting that training for folks in a scholarship fashion under your belts. So, I mean, there's almost, you run out of time very quickly just talking about the number of training opportunities, networking events, opportunities to hear deep technical talks or expertise by folks who are in this industry. There's just a number of things that are available to people. I would encourage you to join Cyversity, become members, get exposure to all of this good stuff in the cybersecurity industry, and then think heavily about how you might invest your time and efforts in order to be a part of it. Unless there are, and I will pause for about 10 seconds, any final comments from anyone on the call? All right, awesome. Bennett, I want to thank you profusely for, spending an additional cycle outside of the stuff you're doing there in Texas and on your own, for our membership out here in the Bay Area to get an opportunity to hear your story. I think we touched on enough of what was driving at, which is the approach that people have taken, the time we spend outside of our normal jobs, trying to bring other folks into this industry, make sure people are looking from a wide optic when they're in college, where you maybe are already early in your career and you're looking for an opportunity to pivot. Cybersecurity is a viable way for you to go about doing that. So thanks to the audience. Thank you for anyone who's watching this in the rerun on YouTube. And we will see you hopefully at the conference in November in Orlando. And if you're unable to make that, again, if you're local here to the Bay Area, we'd love to see you at our event on December 8th at the UC Berkeley campus. So thanks everyone for your time. Really enjoyed the conversation with Bennett, and we look forward to seeing you guys soon.
Thank you.
All right.
Thank you.
Thank you so much.